Hi, this is Beverly from the Art Barn. I haven't done a pastel video yet, and so my desire today is to walk you through a pastel painting. If you like a beautiful winter scene, this one you will enjoy. I'm going to turn the phone towards the easel now to explain what I'm going to be working on. Let's turn it that way. There we go. This is a photograph of a winter scene by a river, and I just loved it. You can see that closely. I printed it out on my computer, and so I'm going to create my rendition of this photograph. So I'm going to put that away. Actually, I tried this before on some paper that I used a product I wasn't real happy with. Wouldn't surprise me if I didn't apply the product correctly, but this is Pastel and Multimedia Primer Clear. I put this on top of a slick piece of paper, and what I ended up with were too many lines. I don't know if you can see that closely, but there were just too many lines behind my pastels, even though I put layers on. And so I'm going to redo this rendition of that beautiful winter scene, but I'm going to use sanded paper instead. So I'm going to put this down and show you the sanded paper and the difference. It's almost like foam board, except it has a sanded side to it. Now this was given to me, and I've used it once in the past for a scene in New Mexico, and I loved it. So I'm going to try, I'm going to try to stay within these boundaries. Now I may test my pastels on this area around the square, but this is what is going to fit into my frame that I picked up at a thrift shop that is absolutely gorgeous. You'd never know that it was secondhand. So I'm going to put this on the easel, and the first thing I want to do is I want to coat this with a color that I want to shine through. And as you see this photograph, maybe you can guess with me what color you would choose. Now I could go with lavender because there's a lot of lavender trees and lavender color in that photograph. But I usually start with the background. And what I see mostly in the background is a beautiful peach color. So I'm going to cover that sanded paper with the peach color first before I actually start blocking in my areas of shape. And I think I might even change the composition a little bit. This ends up right in the middle, and I don't like that. I would rather see it go off to one side. And then I'd like to see more of these background trees behind the river. So let's see what we can do. We'll start with that peach color, and I'm going to cover the square area. Ooh, isn't that beautiful? Beautiful peach color there. Cover the whole area so that, you know, with pastels we do layers and layers sometimes before we get the finished product. So to have a layer of beautiful color underneath your picture is just a great idea. I'm using Rembrandt pastels, and I'm also using some Americana brand. Now, I use my fingers. If you want to wear gloves or use a rag, you may. But in order to get that inside the sanded area, between the teeth or the tooth of the paper or the board, you want to definitely rub that in good. So I'm going to rub every corner. even along the sides here, because I'm going to end up cutting this on a chop saw in order to make it fit my frame. I want to make sure it covers it well. Now the nice thing about sanded paper is you can take a brush, a wet brush, and cover this color, and then it stays on the sanded paper and it doesn't rub off. So we're going to do that quickly. Some water. And a big brush. So I'm going to have to grab some water real quick and pause this, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so we have a wet brush now. This is a synthetic nylon brush. If I were using oils, I would be using a thicker bristle brush. But with pastels, what you use for acrylics will usually work for pastel. What happens when you mix the water with your pastel is it becomes more like paint. Now it may not look as even, but it will stay better. So I keep on dipping in water. Now you can do this with alcohol as well. Now I just have the water handy. I put it pretty thick, so you're getting some residue. I'm getting some residue on the top. Brush strokes can go both ways. You can do X's, then come back with different directions. Most of this isn't going to show, but hopefully it's going to be a beautiful color that shines underneath, no matter what pastel you put on there. So now I'm swishing my brush horizontally, make sure it covers completely, and then I'm going to go vertically down. Just go right past those borders because I'm going to end up cutting it anyhow. And this sipping, or what would you call dripping? Sipping. I was just watching, I just saw a post about sipping paint. We do snack and paint fundraisers for my orphans, and I love doing that. But see the different directions you can do this water. Then rinse your brush out good. You'll want to wash your brush with Dawn dishwashing soap or a degreaser. And then I always use Ivory bar soap. Coat it after it's clean with Ivory bar soap so that it stays in the form that it should be before I have to use that brush again. I'm going to pause the video to let it dry, and then we're going to come back to this. So the next thing we're going to do is block in our shapes. We're going to start with a very dark purple color to match the color of the river here, or stream. And I'm just going to block that in. I might leave a few spots where you see the highlights, but mostly I'm just going to block in that river and put it where I want it for composition. So it's going to come out. I want the stream to be lower than my midline. So I'm going to start over here, and then it's going to come over. There's going to be some land area here, and then the stream is going to go this way. So going by this, I'm going to slant it, and then there's going to be some land area over here, maybe even higher, and it's going to go, this will be my path into the painting. So I'm just gonna
Working in the dark, huh?
well, we're gonna finish blocking in that area. I'm gonna leave some of the orange here and fill all that in. It'll rub everywhere, so I'm not too worried about too much pastel. And then there's some land area, so I'll just block that in. Now I'm going to take the lighter lavender color, and we're going to block in the land areas on each side of the river. So we'll come back, of course, and highlight these with different colors, like the white. But basically, if you squint at your reference, whatever you see is what you probably should put in that land area here. I see a lot of lavender, but I also see some dark purple over in the shadows. So I'm gonna take that deep purple again and put it, let's see, this is the tree line. This is kind of a shadow between the tree line and the snow. And here's a shadow over here too, kind of goes horizontal with that. So I'm just gonna very lightly, just enough there. And my trees are actually gonna go taller. I don't wanna go really fill it in yet because I want some of that yellow in the sky. But these land areas ought to be filled in somewhat. So we have our stream, we have both sides of the stream with the lilac color. We've taken that same dark purple, and to have a good painting with balance, you probably want most of your lights, most of your colors all over the painting. So just seek to integrate all the colors that you have. There's some yellow in that sky, and so we're going to go back with some yellow, and we're going to put this in the very top. Different times of the day you're going to see different things, but what I see is some yellow at the top, and I see mostly orange or coral color close to the bottom. And I want to scatter that. I want to make it uneven because the trees are going to cover up quite a bit of that. Now, here's the fun part. I can use my hand. If you want to use a rag, you can. I would start at the top, go downward, and move your fingers for rag in different directions in order to make sure all of that color gets inside the tooth. So I'm trying to keep the yellow and the purple separate right here. I'm going to go in and mix that dark with the dark purple with the lavender. A nice gradation of color. Then, of course, this is going to be snow. It's just the shadows of the snow for now. The lavender color on each side of the river. And then we'll fill in the river. You can also use a Q-tip. I often use a Q-tip. Let's see if I have one handy. Especially for tiny spots. If my fingers are too big, a Q-tip usually works nice. There we go. Now I'll come back with my finger and do the majority of this. I'm just going around the edges so it doesn't mess with my snow. And I want some highlight. I want some highlight in this. So I don't want to cover all of it up with that dark color. The places that show the shine are nice. And it covers good, doesn't it? Don't have to put a whole lot of pastel to make it. If you fill that part up, just flip it over and got some nice color there. Now I'm using a complementary color scheme. Gold is the opposite, or yellow is the opposite of purple on the color wheel. And so what we're gonna shoot for is a lot of gold in this painting. I'm gonna make that gradation with the yellow and the coral color. Sometimes you're gonna see yellow and sometimes you're gonna see coral, and sometimes you're gonna see a blending of that together to make it look more real. Down here, you're gonna see some of that yellow. Down here, probably not as much. And I missed a spot for my lilac color over here because this is all gonna be shadows of snow before I put my snow in. Okay. Now some of that gold color comes through behind the lavender. That's okay because it's just going to make it prettier. I am going to mix this up a little bit because remember, layers. We're going to have layers, and I'm going to go back with more layers when I do the detail. Now one thing I'll need to put in here are some trees. Over on this side of the river, the trees are further away, so they're not going to be as bright. They're going to be duller. So you got to think of that when you use a pastel. Instead of a real deep purple, like I would for the front trees, I'm going to use a duller pastel for the back trees. And I have some pastel pencils here that are really helpful. This is the same color, but when I put it on the sanded paper, it's going to not be as dark as the big pastel that I lifted. So mix some of that there. I kind of like that sun to be back there before I get started on my trees. I don't really want to mess with that too much. After my trees are in, and a lot of this will be covered up with tree branches and trees. So I'm going to use this pastel pencil. You can use a small pastel. Whatever you feel like is helpful. I'm just going to add just a little bit of that. There was something, make sure that you rub your pastel before putting it on there. There was something on that pastel, probably from my finger, that made it dirty. And then you've got a bigger mess. So now I'm going to go back with the yellow. And let's see. I think I'm about ready. Ooh, there's a little bit of yellow down here too. I'm about ready to put my trees in on the farthest side of the river. Sanded paper feels a little different, like the Canson paper, something like that. just needed more of the white and the yellow mixed together in order to make that glow. Okay, now I'm going to put those trees in. They're in groups of threes. If they're not in groups of threes, I make them in groups of threes. So we're going to pull some up a little bit higher. And higher here. But I'm not going to make them the same height. Different heights for more of an interest. I'm going to put one over here. Now this may not be exactly like the reference. You notice this space between this one and this one is different than the space between these two and that one. It's always try to vary when you're talking about natural things. Now, the branches are going to end up with forks at the end of each one that you do. And sometimes those branches are going to overlap as well. We also have some trees that are very light in the background that we don't hardly see, and we're going to make them different heights so that they do not look uniform. So that's the left side. Now, there are some trees back here that are about the same distance away, so I'm going to use my same pencil. And again, we're going to do them in groups. If you look closely at the reference, you're going to, I get caught up in the details too quickly, and I'm not ready for details yet. I'm just trying to get the basic shapes up here. So sometimes it's best, if you know how to make trees already, not to go by your reference if you think you're going to get caught up with too many details. Of course, make sure that you have those tiny trees in the background. Different heights. The ones that really aren't going to stand out because other trees are going to cover those up. Okay, so let's go to these big trees that are sitting on the bank here. I'll let you see the reference again. There's some big trees sitting on the bank here. So I'm going to put a couple of these in, not all of them. With my big pastel, I could use the corner for one that's extra dark. Let's see if I can move this over so it's not in the middle. We don't want them to be in the middle. And these actually go off off your reference, so they can go as tall as you wish. They don't. You definitely want them taller than the trees in the background because of atmospheric perspective. You want them darker and you want them taller. So I'm going to put one there, and I'm going to put one over here closer to the bank. It's little. Now they may overlap. They do even in the reference. And again, I'm making them uneven, but they're going to be in threes. Now because I don't want nubby ends, I'm going to use my pastel pencil again in order to bring these to a point and to make them smaller at the top, more realistic. So I'm pulling these up, with forks, overlapping some. Let's see. And whenever you come from the trunk outward, you're going to bring some of that pastel color with you, so be aware of that. I don't want to mix it on my sky, so I'm going to bring it outward, and then I'm not going to rub it or mess with it, because if I rub it or mess with it now, it's going to mess up my sky in the background, and I really don't want to do that. We've got a bush over here, and I could use my big pastel with the corner of it. It's not as tall, and just about all of it comes from there, but I'm not going to end it at the tree line. I'm going to go a little bit further up so there's no tangent there. Okay, so with your Q-tip, you could bring those branches, that pastel color down inside at the bottom, but I wouldn't mess with it in the sky. Now, to add detail later, you can do that as well. So we've got lots of trees in the background. We've got the two basic ones here. We need some reflection in the water as well. So they're going to come down and opposite or symmetrical. Think of symmetry. Also in the water, we have some blue color. So I'm going to add a dark blue pastel around that shadow. Add some color. And we can mix it with the Q-tip later. I guess we could do it now, and then we'll add the land area that surrounds. Okay. There's also a heavy bank there up against the snow that I'm going to take my hard pastel and bring it down. There's a land area here. It's a lighter color. It's almost like a tan, but I also mixed a lavender in there so for color unity. A tan color. And then there's some land area here that I wanted to bring out. Okay. I'm going to go back to my lavender color and put some of that in the land areas for reflection. There's leaves a little bit in the water I see, maybe left over from winter. And then I'm going to make that hard line of a bank there, but not perfectly straight. Keep it interesting. Okay, now I could take my Q-tip and do a little bit of mixing with the blue mixed with that dark purple, and integrating, or what you call it, gradation of the reflection. So you mix a little bit of that dark color in the reflection as you go. So what's next? How about some lighter color in the water that needs to show some reflection from the snow? A little bit of this lavender color. Try to work around the reflections of the trees and don't overdo it, but it kind of fades out in the background. So you have an advantage there that you don't need to see as much detail way back there. Kind of fades out. Okay, I'm just slightly going over this. My strokes are horizontal to keep the water with the flow. And I think what I'm going to do too, before I finish on the water, I want to make sure that all of that land area is not gone away. Put that in again, because when I swooshed it, I did, and I don't think my reflection showed up as well. So with that dark purple, now with everything going on there, I think we've got a good rendition of the water. Now we can go back and lighten it up too later. Shall we put some snowy branches on? See, we don't, we use the lavender for the shadow color and the snowy branches. Don't get too detailed here, but this probably is more detailed than we've done before. I use the side of my pastel and I make shapes with it, and I leave some of that sky behind, and I make sure that some of my branches are showing. But I also give the impression of those trees in the background that we're not doing every detail on. We're just making them look like trees. Same here. Now we're gonna make some highlights too and some shadows, especially in these forefront trees because they're closest to us. But right now you're just seeing shapes. Think of shapes. I see tree shapes. Ovals, circles, one's overlapping another, which is perfectly fine. They go all the way to the edge. Now that's the lighter color. I think we need to put a little bit of shadow color in there, which is my dark purple, just a little bit, some shadow color. That might be too much. Just barely touch it in places on those trees, and then you can go back with a Q-tip and fill it in. Especially these in the front. We'll kind of leave those for your imagination in the back. Okay, now I'm going to take the Q-tip, do a little bit of rubbing without ruining my branches or groups of leaves or on the trees. There we go. If you see a heavy spot, you want to disperse that color so it doesn't dominate the scene. Your eye should be drawn to the sun and the reflection on the lake. So if anything else, if your eye is getting anything else, you probably want to keep your, subdue it so that the reflection stands out. I'm going to go over the trunk of this tree again because I feel like it's just not, I must have used a different dark color, plum color. I'm using the edge. They're a little bit darker than the ones in the background. Keep that in mind. Okay. Now, I think we have our trees in, our background, branches. what if we put some reflection on the snow too? And that's, you're going to take your white pastel, and wherever you see the light color from your reference, you want to add that light color to your snow. You always want to see the shadows underneath, so it should never be solid. But as you go down this river, you're going to see some light places on that snow, and sometimes even a bank of snow with shadows underneath. Now my reference doesn't show a lot of this because I moved my composition over, but on the left side, actually rub that in a little bit as long as some of your shadows are showing. There. So we see white and we see lavender, and that's the main idea. So let's go over to this side. I see some, ooh, there's some branches falling down there that I missed that are very intriguing for the composition. Take this up and bring those branches down, because there was some snow on those branches that was really pretty. I want to put some purple in there. Now with the white on top of that, it's going to really bring out the beauty of the snow. There goes my easel. I don't know why that happens. We'll see if that'll hold it up. So some of that was coming down. Okay, and just a little bit here and a little bit there. Remember, these are the most detailed ones. So let's go back to the snow bank. See snow here. We see snow in front of the trees, behind the trees, scattered. Try to make sure you don't overtake your trunk there. And I'm going to put like a blanket of snow in front of each tree that I want to stand out. We should have some purple on these. And a little bit of white for ice. I always put my lighter color right over my darker value. So your white is going to go on top of, over your lavender color to make it stand out. Now this is a nice snowy bank here, but most of it's in shadow, so I'm just going to do the edge of the bank with the snow edge. And then what's interesting is it's got some branches going out like this. And they're kind of in threes. I'm going to make them close together but not uniform. With a little bit of pastel pencil, I could add a little more depth to that. And there you go. Now someday, maybe I'll have a professional photographer doing this, and they'll be able to show you the reference as I continue to work. But it gets to the point where you no longer look at the reference because you have an idea in your mind what you want your end result to be. So I think without adding a whole lot to this, make sure we got some snow on these trees in front. branches. Snow in the background here. Oops. There you go. Maybe a little bit more white in the sky, and there's a few places my finger touched, and I want that reflection to be there, and the reflection here. Actually, that's more gold down here. Remember that beautiful gold color? So, what do you think? Do you like it? I do. I just noticed one thing though that might be helpful. There's a snowbank here that I didn't catch before the river runs away. There's a difference in the height there. Blend that in a little bit. Okay, so now my river can do its course. I think we're finished. I'm going to finish the video. Now I may look at it for a week or so and decide it's time to add or to change anything. But you do the same. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.